Heaven Official's Blessing. Tian Guan Ci Fu by Mo Xiang Tong Xiu. Read by Plant Bones. Chapter 15, Part 2. At Paradise Manor, Questions of Xianle. Xialian finished wrapping the new bandages before he asked with a shaky voice, "Are you from Xianle?" The boy turned to gaze at him with big eyes. Xialian repeated his question, but the boy only shook his head. Xialian then asked again, "Then where are you from exactly?" The boy answered arduously, "Yong'an." The human-faced disease had only ever erupted within the kingdom of Xianle, yet this boy was from the kingdom of Yong'an. Xialian felt his sight go dark and blurted out, "Have you ever met the white-clothed calamity?" The white-clothed calamity, the origin of plagues, the symbol of misfortune. He was the nightmare of the previous generation of gods, before Crimson Rainsop Flower was born. If not for Junwu, who personally exterminated him, that nightmare would have probably continued even to this day. That Supreme was always dressed in snow-white funeral garb, his expansive sleeves fluttering, and he wore a cry-smiling mask on his face. The mask was called that because the right half of it was smiling, and the left half was crying, half joyous, half sad. If he was seen somewhere, it meant that place would soon be doomed to ruin, and that chaos would befall the land. In the last battle before the fall of his kingdom, Xialian stood upon the towering city walls of Xianle's imperial capital, his face covered in grime and tears, and written with a lost and bemused expression as he gazed down at his kingdom. In his blurred vision there stood a white silhouette amongst the fields of corpses, just outside the city walls, his giant white sleeves fluttering, his figure distinct. Xialian dropped his head to look down at him, and the white apparition raised his head to look at Xialian, and waved directly at him. The cry-smiling mask was the nightmare Xialian couldn't chase away, even after hundreds of years. The boy didn't seem to know what the white no-face was, and only watched Xialian with a blank expression. All of a sudden, he let out a loud cry of, "Ah!" It turned out that Xialian had unconsciously grabbed his shoulder and gripped too hard. It wasn't until the shout that Xialian snapped out of it and hurriedly released his grip. "I'm sorry." Huazhang spoke in a low voice. "You're tired. Go rest." As soon as he said those words, two dainty girls entered the hall from a small door on the side wall and took the boy away. He frequently looked back at Xialian as he was being led off, and Xialian comforted him. Don't worry. I'll come find you again in a bit." Huazhang turned to Xialian. "Sit down and relax, and leave him for now. If you have any questions for him, I have my ways of prying open his lips." Prying open his lips sounded rather horrifying, and Xialian hurriedly replied, "No, that's all right. If he couldn't say anything, then let it go. We'll take this slow." Huazhang sat down next to Xialian. "What are your plans for the boy?" Xialian gave the question some thought. "Keep him with me and bring him along." "He's a ghost, not a human," Huazhang said. "Why don't you leave him here in Ghost City? I'll have no trouble feeding him another mouth." Xialian replied earnestly, "Sanlang, truly thank you. But when I said I would bring him along with me, it's not just for the purpose of keeping him around." Ghost City was indeed Huazhang's territory, and if he was willing to protect the boy, then no one could harm him, nor would he go hungry. However, the most important thing was to actually guide the boy, to help him organize his mind and speech so that he could look and behave normally. Ghost City was a bustling place, but it was chaotic and wild and unsuitable for such counseling. Xialian couldn't think of anyone who would have the patience to undertake this task beside himself. Celine replied, I'm already immensely grateful that you found him for me. I can't trouble you any more with the aftermath. Hua Chong appeared to disagree, but didn't push further. He said plainly, It's really no trouble. While you're here, just let me know if you need anything. You're free to go wherever you want. Just then, Celia noticed movement. The scimitar on Hua Chong's waist seemed to have gone through a sudden change. Celia looked down and was instantly amazed. It turned out there was a silver eye crafted on the hilt of the scimitar. The pattern of the eye was formed by a mere few silver strokes, but although simple, it looked vivid enough to be alive. He didn't notice at first because the eye was closed in a thin line, but just now the eye fluttered open and revealed a crimson gem-like pupil, rattling as it spun once. Hua Chong noticed it too, and said solemnly, Guga, I need to leave for a bit. I'll be right back. An alarm? Celine asked. Could Lord Windmaster and Tinto have shown their true selves here in Ghost City? Celine rose too. I'll come with you. Hua Chong gently pushed him back down. Don't worry. It's not His Highness Tai Hua or the other one. Guga, just sit here. There's no need for you to go. Since Hua Chong made that so clear, Celine couldn't keep insisting on going along. Hua Chong turned and left the main hall, waving from the doorway. The beaded curtain parted automatically as he approached, and once he exited, it let itself back down, clacking as it did. Seated on the black jaded divan, Celine relaxed briefly and thought about the bandaged boy. Remembering the objective of his trip, however, he rose to his feet. He passed through a small door the girls had left from and came to a small garden. The vermilion corridor cutting across the garden was empty of life. Celine was still wondering which way he should go when suddenly a black shadow flashed by. That retreating silhouette, it was the waning moon officer. Celine recalled the cursed shackle on the officer's wrist. It had been on his mind. He was about to call out to him when the silhouette disappeared. From the way the man had moved, it seemed he was wary of being discovered. Thus, Celine soundlessly followed after him. Making his way to the corner of the building behind which the officer disappeared, Celine clung to the wall and stealthily gazed over. The youth moved swiftly and was constantly on the lookout around him, extremely cautious, as if, and indeed, afraid of being seen. Celine wondered. The waning moon officer should be one of Sun Lung's subordinates, so why is he sneaking around inside Sun Lung's territory? Celine suspected this man could possess ill intent, so he hid himself and followed. The waning moon officer made a number of turns through the hallways, but Celine held his breath and was always within a dozen steps behind. They rounded a corner and came to a long hallway, and at the end there was a set of large, beautifully decorated doors. If he turns around now, there won't be anywhere to hide, Celine thought. Unexpectedly, just as the thought crossed his mind, the waning moon officer stopped and turned his head. Celine knew he was in trouble the moment the officer paused. Hastily, Rue flew out and wrapped itself several times around the wooden beam overhead, pulling Celine up to the ceiling where he clung to the beam. The waning moon officer didn't see anyone behind him and didn't think to look up, so he turned around again and continued on his way. Nonetheless, Celine still didn't dare to let himself down so soon. He remained pressed against the ceiling as he inched forward silently, thinking that he resembled a gecko as he moved. Good thing the other party didn't go far and stopped before a set of doors. Celine stopped too, to observe. Before the door was a statue of a woman, wily and beautiful. Of course, from Celine's angle, all you could see clearly was her round head and a shallow, round, jaded plate in her hands. The waning moon officer didn't move to open the door first, but instead turned to the statue and tossed something onto the jaded plate. It made a crisp, clacking sound. Dice? Celine guessed. It was a sound he'd heard many times today, and not one he'd forget for a long time. Sure enough, when the masked youth removed his hand and Celian looked, it was indeed 2 dice in the jaded plate, both revealing 6 red dots. The waning moon officer tucked the dice away before opening the door. It was surprisingly unlocked, and when he entered through the doors and closed them behind him, Celian didn't hear any sound of locks or latches either. He waited for a moment before he fluttered down to the ground as quietly as a piece of paper and crossed his arms as he examined the door. This room didn't appear to be that big, and whatever the waning moon officer was doing inside should make noise. Yet once he entered, there was not a sound from within. Celian decisively raised a hand and pushed. Sure enough, when he opened the door, there was not a soul inside. From the looks of it, this was a perfectly normal, if quite luxurious, little room. Everything inside was in order at a glance, and there was no possibility that there was a secret path. Celian closed the door and looked thoughtfully at the female statue, then at the jaded plate in her hands. It seemed the mechanism lay in that jaded plate, and it seemed that the mechanism lay in that jaded plate and the 2 dice. The room was still locked, not with physical lock, but a magic one. A key was required to open this lock, or an authorization incantation. The dice must roll 2 6s in that plate for one to see the real destination behind those doors. But Celian rolling 2 6s right then and there was something that would never happen. He could only gaze at the door and sigh. After he paced for a bit in front of the doors, he withdrew and returned from whence he came. After walking for a while, he stopped abruptly. After walking for a while, he stopped abruptly. Walking toward him from the other end of the path was a tall, red-clad figure, with a slender and long silver scimitar hung at his waist. It was Huatang. He walked over with his arms crossed. "Gaga, I've been looking for you." He looked exactly as he did when he left, the only difference being that the scimitar on his waist was out of its scabbard. Along with the scabbard, scabbard clattered against him, clanking as he walked, painting a picture of arrogance. However, that silver eye on the hilt of Emming was closed. Xiaolian composed himself and said, "I was going to see the child, but I didn't realize your house was so big. I got lost." At first, Xiaolian was going to tell Huatang about what had just happened, but when the words came to his lips, they turned around and he swallowed them. The reason he had come to Ghost City was to investigate the missing heavenly official. Any signs of suspiciousness must not be ignored, and who knows? Maybe the missing official was imprisoned in that room. It'd be best if he could find a way to get through those doors first. If the two matters were unrelated, Celian would report to Huatang about his subordinate's suspicious actions. But if the two matters were related, Huatang spoke as he led Celian back to the main hall. "If you want to see that boy, I can send someone to bring him to you. There's no need to seek him out yourself." It was probably because Xiaolian had something to hide, but the way he spoke to Huatong unconsciously became more docile. "Mm, you finished your business so fast?" "It's finished," Huatong replied. "Just another gang of useless trash embarrassing themselves. That's all." The tone in which he said useless trash was very familiar, and Xiaolian guessed. Did Green Ghost Tirong come and cause trouble? Huatong laughed. "And that's right. Didn't I tell you that many have their eyes on my place here? Chirong has wanted Ghost City for himself for years now. But the most he can ever do is want and burn with envy. So every so often he'll send even more useless underlings to cause mischief. Nothing worth mentioning. Don't worry about it. Actually, I just happened to have a book to show Gogo. Might Gogo grant me the pleasure?" Of course, Celian replied happily. Traversing the long corridor, Huatong led Celian to another lofty great hall. The doors of the hall seemed to be made of steel, with violent beasts carved upon them, horrible and terrifying. The moment Huatong approached, the beasts parted and opened the doors. A blast of killing intent assaulted Celian before he even stepped foot into the hall, and he tensed, veins popping on his hands, prepared to face anything. However, once he saw clearly what was inside the hall, he blinked. His defenses melted away in an instant, and his legs moved on their own, bringing him inside. Within the great hall, all manner of weapons were hung on all four walls. There were sabers, swords, spears, shields, whips, warhammers. It was an armory. Any man finding himself in an armory such as this, surrounded by all kinds of weaponry, would feel as if he were in heaven, and his blood would boil with excitement. And Celian was no exception. His eyes were wide, his face bright. The last time he felt such exhilaration was in Junwu's armory. Although his expression remained schooled, he was already so excited he was stammering, May I touch? Huachong smiled. As Gogo likes. Xielian's hands instantly flew out to feel the various weapons hung on the walls, so absorbed he couldn't tear himself away. All of these are masterpieces. This sword is splendid. A battle of one against many would most definitely bring out its godly powers. This one too. Wait, and that saber! Huachong was leaning on the wall near the door, watching Celian's face flush with delight. Gogo, what do you think? Celian was examining each piece so intently he was reluctant to turn around. What do I think? What? Do you like it? I do, Celian replied. Do you like it a lot? Huatong asked again. Very much, Celian exclaimed. Huatong seemed to have snickered, but Celian didn't notice. His heart was busy racing as he unsheathed a cold and shimmering verdant blade, at least 4 feet long, marveling as he did so. Has Gaga found any that he particularly fancies? Huachang spoke up again. Tielian's entire face was bright and glowing. He was unable to stop singing praises. Yes, all of them! Originally, I was thinking Gaga didn't have any useful weapons on hand, so if there was anything you fancied here, you could just take it for yourself, Huachang said. But, since Gaga likes them all, I'll give them all to you. No. There's no need, Celian quickly said. I have no use for weapons anyway. Really? Huachong said. But I clearly see that Gogo loves swords. Liking them doesn't mean I have to own them, Celian said. I haven't used one in years. Just looking makes me happy. Besides, I'd have nowhere to put them if you gave them all to me. That's easy to solve, Huachong replied. I'll give this entire armory to you. Celian took that as a joke and grinned. There's no way I could take away this big room. No need to take it away, Huachong said. I'll give you the property too. Just come visit when you're free. No, it's okay, Celian said. An armory requires constant maintenance. I'd hate to neglect the weapons. Celian placed the sword carefully back onto its holder and said nostalgically, Once upon a time, I owned an armory like this too, but it was burned down. All of these weapons are precious devices to be desired. You have to cherish them, Sunlam. That's easy too, Huachang said. If I'm free, I can help Goga maintain the armory. Celian laughed. Well, I certainly don't have the guts to ask my the Ghost King to do chores for me. All of a sudden, Junwu's warning right before he left the mission echoed in Celian's mind. The scimitar Ming is a cursed blade, a blade of misfortune. To forge such an evil weapon require terrifyingly cruel sacrifice and bloody determination. Do not touch it. Do not let it touch you either. If you do, the consequences will be unimaginable. Xie contemplated, but still decided to ask in the end. But, San Lang, none of these weapons are matched against your scimitar Ming, right? Hua Chang cocked his left brow. Oh, has Gaga heard of my scimitar too? I've heard some rumors, Xielian replied. Hua Chang snickered. I bet they weren't nice rumors. Did someone tell you that my scimitar was forged by an evil, bloody ritual? That I sacrificed living humans? Sharp as always, Xielian replied, nothing too horrible. Everyone has negative gossip about them, but not everyone would believe it. But perhaps I might have the honor of seeing the legendary scimitar Ming. You've actually already seen it, Goga, Hua Tong said. He took a few steps closer to Xielian and said softly, look, Goga, this is Ming. The eye upon the silver scimitar that hung at his waist rattled as it swiveled in Xielian's direction. It might have been Xielian's imagination, but he thought that silver eye was subtly squinting into a crescent.